Let's talk about what normative means. Every time someone uses the word normative correctly, they are saying that something should and should not happen, or should not have happened, or should not be happening. Normative claims are open to the past, the present, and the future. Normative claims are always talking about how there is a prescribed way things should have been, be now, or be in the future. And every time someone is making a normative claim, they must have some underlying standard that they're using to say what should and should not be. In other words, slightly different meaning too, every time someone makes a normative claim, they must have some underlying value that is filling in the blanks about what is right or wrong. Let's look at this a little bit deeper. Normativity is all about what is guiding our actions or our attitudes. Every time someone says that they should or should not do something, should or should not believe something, like we're obligated to do something or obligated to refrain from doing something, all the should and should nots are about guiding our actions and our attitudes, about saying how things should be, about prescribing reality, not about describing reality, but prescribing reality. So every time someone's making a normative claim, they're talking about how things should or should not be. Some people think that there is no such thing as a true normative claim. Error theorists, anti-realists, and nihilists are three major groups of philosophical camps that have denied the existence of true normative claims. So an error theorist, an anti-realist, or a nihilist might say something like, don't tell me what colors I'm allowed to paint with or should paint with. Don't tell me what I am allowed to do or what I should or should not do. So I did want to mention those camps. But setting those aside, let's dig a little bit deeper about what normative means. Normative means there's some kind of claim about what should be, and that can come up in lots of different fields. So for example, in epistemology, which is the field that deals with knowledge, you might make a normative epistemic claim when you say things like, you should not be believing this, you don't have enough evidence. In aesthetics, which is the subfield in philosophy that deals with beauty and disgust and asks questions like what makes something funny, is it the audience or the artist, you might make a normative aesthetic claim like you should or not paint with red on a black canvas. In ethics, which is the subfield in philosophy that deals with what is right and wrong to do, you could be making normative ethical claims when you say things like you should not lie to your mother. So in epistemology, in aesthetics, in ethics, but also in other fields like in politics, in science, when you're making a claim about what should or should not have happened or be happening or happen in the future, you're making normative claims. Normative is always a concept, if you will, that is signaling what should be, not what is. So prescribing reality, not describing reality. Let's dig a little bit deeper into normative ethics. The rest of this video is going to be about normative ethics. Ethics is a subfield in philosophy. You could be doing metaethics, normative ethics, or applied ethics. In metaethics, you're asking questions like, where does the idea of righteousness even come from? In applied ethics, you are literally saying some instance is right or wrong to do based on a standard. In normative ethics, that's when you have the standards for what actions are ethical or unethical, because remember, normative means that there is some kind of should or should not. So when you're doing normative ethics, what you're doing is looking at the standards for what is right, wrong, good, bad. Normative ethics is the subfield in ethics that deals with the standards for our ethical attitudes and actions. And there are always going to be some underlying value. So one normative ethical theory is deontology, and it tells you what you should and should not do with the underlying value of rationality and reason and the individual's ability to follow the categorical imperative. Another normative ethical theory is divine command theory, And this theory tells you what you should and should not do to be ethical based on the underlying values of God and getting into heaven. A third normative ethical theory that I'll tell you about in this video is utilitarianism. And utilitarianism tells you what you should and should not do according to the underlying value of pleasure and maximizing pleasure and the majority or a moral community. So there's lots of different normative ethical views, just like there's lots of different views in aesthetics and lots of different views in science and lots of different views in politics. Every single field that you're in could have a standard for what's good or bad. And when you're using those underlying standards or values to make judgments about what we should do or believe, then you're making normative claims. Normative conjures up the idea that there's a should or a should not, a way for us to prescribe what we should have done or should do now or should do in the future. And every time you're making a normative claim, there is a explicit or implicit underlying value that is enabling you to make the claim that we should, etc., etc.